Imagine a world where your neighbor, your friend, even a family member could accuse you of a terrible crime, and that accusation alone was enough to seal your fate. A world where fear was a weapon, wielded by the powerful to control the masses. This isn't fiction. This was the reality for thousands of people during one of history's darkest chapters, the Great Witch Hunts. For centuries, a wave of terror swept across Europe and later, the American colonies. It was a time when superstition, religious fervor, and social panic combined to create a deadly storm. But how did it all begin? How did the simple fear of the unknown escalate into a systematic persecution that claimed tens of thousands of lives? Today we're diving deep into the hidden truth of the witch hunts. We'll uncover how a society's deepest anxieties can be twisted into a justification for cruelty, and how the hunt for witches was about so much more than just magic. It was about power, control, and a battle for the very soul of society. This story is a haunting reminder of what can happen when fear is allowed to rule, a lesson that echoes through history, right up to the present day. So buckle up, because we are about to journey back in time to an era when the line between saint and sinner was drawn in fire. To understand the witch hunts, we have to go back to medieval Europe, a world saturated with faith and fear. Life was harsh, unpredictable, and short. Plagues, famines, and wars were a constant threat, and people desperately sought explanations for their suffering. In this climate, religion wasn't just a part of life, it was life itself. The Christian church provided comfort and a framework for understanding the world. A clear battle between good and evil, God and the devil. But alongside official Christian doctrine, ancient pagan beliefs and folk traditions lingered. People still believed in nature spirits, local deities, and magical remedies. For a long time, the church tolerated these practices or absorbed them. However, as the church consolidated its power, this tolerance began to wane. Theologians started to reframe these old beliefs in a more sinister light. They weren't just harmless superstitions anymore, they were signs of demonic influence. The idea of the devil's pact began to take root. This was a terrifying concept, that a person could willingly renounce God and trade their soul to Satan in exchange for magical powers. This wasn't just heresy, it was treason against God. Slowly but surely, the image of the witch transformed from a simple village healer or curse maker into a soldier in the devil's army, part of a vast secret conspiracy to overthrow Christendom. The stage was now set for a holy war, not against a foreign army, but against the enemy within. As this fear intensified, the church needed a mechanism to root out this hidden enemy. That mechanism was the Inquisition. Originally established to combat heresy, the Inquisition evolved into a terrifyingly efficient machine of persecution. When the Inquisition arrived in a town, it would issue a grace period, urging heretics and witches to confess. After this period, the real hunt began. Neighbors were encouraged, even pressured, to denounce each other. A personal grudge, a dispute over land, or simple jealousy could easily become a formal accusation of witchcraft. Once accused, you were considered guilty until proven innocent, an almost impossible task. The inquisitors were trained interrogators, skilled at twisting words and creating a narrative of guilt. Confession was the ultimate goal, and they would use any means necessary to get it. Suspects were subjected to sleep deprivation, starvation, and psychological manipulation. If that didn't work, there was torture. Devices like the strapetto, which dislocated the shoulders, or the rack, which stretched the body, were used to break the victim's will. Under such agony, people would confess to anything flying on broomsticks, attending demonic sabbaths, or cursing their neighbors. These forced confessions then proved the existence of the satanic conspiracy, creating a vicious cycle of accusations, confessions, and more accusations. The targets were often society's most vulnerable: poor elderly women, widows, and midwives, people who lived on the margins and were easy scapegoats for a community's problems. Then, in 1487, two German inquisitors published a book that would pour gasoline on the fire. It was called the Malleus Maleficarum, or the Hammer of Witches. This book was, essentially, a witch hunter's manual. It was a bestseller of its time, second only to the Bible. The Malleus Maleficarum laid out a theological argument for the existence of witches, explained how to identify them, and provided detailed instructions on how to prosecute them. It was a deeply misogynistic text arguing that women were more susceptible to demonic temptation due to their supposed weakness, gullibility, and insatiable carnal lust. The book legitimized the persecution of women on an unprecedented scale. It gave judges, priests, and local authorities the proof they needed to pursue their suspicions with religious and legal authority. It described in lurid detail the supposed acts committed by witches, from causing storms to killing infants. It also systematically dismantled any form of legal defense. For example, if the accused showed no fear, it was a sign they were supported by the devil. If they cried, they were using crocodile tears to trick their judges. The Malleus Maleficarum created a paranoid reality where there was no escape. Its influence spread like wildfire, providing the ideological fuel for the most intense period of witch hunting in European history. With the theoretical framework in place, the spark of fear ignited a wildfire of mass hysteria. The period from roughly 1560 to 1660 became known as the Burning Times. In regions of the Holy Roman Empire, now modern-day Germany, the panic reached a fever pitch. Entire villages were consumed by the craze. Accusations spiraled out of control, creating a domino effect. Tortured victims would name accomplices, who would then be arrested and tortured, naming even more people. In some areas, the trials became so frantic that authorities executed people in batches, sometimes burning dozens at a time. It wasn't just the poor and elderly anymore. Soon wealthy citizens, town officials, and even children were swept up in the frenzy. This wasn't just a German phenomenon. In France, Scotland, and Switzerland, similar scenes of collective terror unfolded. A crop failure, a sick cow, or a sudden illness could trigger a full-blown witch hunt. It was a perfect storm of social anxiety, religious fanaticism, and institutionalized violence. The trials were often public spectacles, feeding the fear and paranoia of the community. In this atmosphere, logic and reason vanished, replaced by an irrational, bloodthirsty panic that saw demons and conspirators lurking in every shadow. The hysteria wasn't confined to Europe. It crossed the Atlantic with the Puritan colonists, who brought their deep-seated religious beliefs and fears to the New World. This culminated in the most infamous witch hunt in American history, the Salem Witch Trials of 1692. The colony of Massachusetts was a tense place. Racked by fears of Indian attacks, religious anxieties, and local squabbles, it all started when a few young girls in Salem Village began exhibiting strange behaviors, convulsions, screaming, and contortions. The local doctor, unable to find a physical cause, diagnosed them as bewitched. The girls, under pressure from magistrates, began naming their tormentors, starting with a slave named Tituba, a beggar named Sarah Good, and an elderly woman named Sarah Osborne. Tituba, possibly under duress, confessed to meeting the devil and named others, igniting the panic. A special court was established, and the spectral evidence of the accusers, their claims of being tormented by the apparitions of the accused, was accepted as fact. The trials spiraled out of control. Respectable church members were accused and arrested. 19 people were hanged on Gallows Hill, several others died in prison, and one elderly man, Giles Corey, was pressed to death with heavy stones for refusing to enter a plea. The Salem Witch Trials became a chilling example of how quickly a tight-knit, devout community could turn on itself. So, what stopped this centuries-long reign of terror? By the late 17th and early 18th centuries, the intellectual climate of Europe began to change. This was the dawn of the Age of Enlightenment. Thinkers like Isaac Newton and John Locke promoted a new worldview based on reason, science, and empirical evidence. As scientific explanations for natural phenomena like storms and diseases became more widely accepted, there was less need to blame them on supernatural malice. Judges and a growing portion of the educated elite became more skeptical of the evidence presented in witch trials. They started to question the validity of confessions obtained through torture and the reality of spectral evidence. The legal systems began to tighten their rules of evidence, making it much harder to convict someone of witchcraft. As central governments grew stronger, they took control of local courts, reining in the often chaotic and biased local trials. The religious fervor that had fueled the hunts began to cool, and the witch slowly faded from a real-world threat into a figure of folklore. The era of the witch hunts was finally drawing to a close. the witch hunts left a dark and enduring legacy. While his accurate numbers are impossible to pin down, historians estimate that between 40,000 to 50,000 people were executed for witchcraft. The vast majority, perhaps 80%, were women. These events left deep scars on the collective psyche of societies, scars that still echo today. The stereotype of the evil old witch is a direct descendant of the propaganda used to justify these persecutions. Today, many people are reclaiming the word witch in a positive light, associating it with modern paganism, nature worship, and female empowerment. But the history of the witch hunts serves as a powerful and chilling reminder of the dangers of mass hysteria, religious extremism, and scapegoating. It shows us how easily a society gripped by fear can dehumanize a group of people and commit terrible atrocities in the name of righteousness. The story of the witch hunts is not just about the past. It's a timeless warning about the darkness that can emerge when we let fear triumph over reason. And when we start hunting for monsters among ourselves, the witch hunts left scars that still echo today. May history remind us of the dangers of fear and fanaticism. Thank you for joining us on this journey into one of history's darkest periods. If you found this video insightful, please give it a like, share it with others, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the past. See you next time.